I am the owner and co-founder of a company called Scribble, where we help potential home buyers meet the minimum requirements for a mortgage loan. I was raised in a household with a single mom. We didn't know or talk about money or none of that stuff, so I didn't have a foundation for business.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk 12 podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do us one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming out this year. Without further ado, I have another guest coming on from the TV show The Blox that I still have yet to make an episode on. I know I'm probably going to get to it sooner or later, but as I've said each time, I met tons of amazing people there, and so why not invite them all on my podcast, right? It makes it easier on my end. And so this guy, he was also in the real estate industry. He's not an agent, though, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're going to talk about some exciting things. We got to connect at the Blox. We got to sit down and eat lunch, eat dinner with each other, and just chop it up about business, entrepreneurship, real estate, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I was like, man, let's get you back on the show, and rescheduled it. Took us a couple times to get here, but we're here. We're live. So, Jonas, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity, the pleasure to get to know you, to get to meet you yet, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jonas Mitchell. I'm the owner and co-founder of a company called Scribble, where we help potential home buyers meet the minimum requirements for a mortgage loan. So we're based out of Alexandria, Virginia, and we do very, very fun things. We basically focus on having money be in your mindset and getting people to realize that they can do things uh, far more and far faster than they thought possible.
No, I agree 100%, man. You don't know what you don't know. A lot of time that education piece is missing. So you show them the light and people can really take off, man. So, but before we really get into what you got going on now, take us back in the time machine. What was little Jonas like growing up? Like, where did this entrepreneurial spirit stem from? Was it even there when you were younger? Like, what was life like in your childhood?
Yeah, no, not even close. So I like to. So my life is kind of weird, right? I have I had both of my parents up until I was 7, and it was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, and so we're kind of like a tale of two homes in a sense because my brother, who unfortunately just passed this year, my brother was raised in a very tumultuous situation. So my dad was very abusive towards my mom, and she told me some horror stories. And then right before they had me, he found God, right? And so then I was born, and so he never touched me like at all. I had like the most amazing childhood that like anyone could ever imagine. Lots of love, lots of fun, lots of travel, right? We were not wealthy. We were poor, to be quite honest with you. We didn't have a lot of money, but we did have a lot of love. And I grew up in a very small town, so everybody knew everybody. All my family was there, my cousins, my uncles, right? My grandparents had like 11 kids.
Yeah,
Um,
sheesh.
so yeah, huge family. Um, and everything was great, man. I'll be honest with you. It was really cool. And then my dad kind of relapsed out of religion, um, went back to being abusive. Again, still never touched me, but him and my mom and my brother always got into it. So fortunately, my mom was amazing. She decided to take us both out of there and get us into our own place. And then, so never really kind of saw my dad after that too much. But my mom is a freaking rock star, man. If there's one thing about my mom that I always thank her for, because we never had a lot of money growing up. Today, she owns 2 homes. She has, money in the bank. She's at retirement age. Like, she's doing very well. And she's always just had like a basic job. She's always been financially sound in what she does and what she's always done. So she was just a very stable person and a go-getter. So I think that's the part that I got from her that kind of brought me into the entrepreneurship world was kind of wanting to pay her back. Like she sacrificed a lot for me and my brother. So I wanted to make sure that, before, she leaves this earth, hopefully I'll have the opportunity to pay her back, tenfold, which is why I do this. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. There's always like that. I always start the question off with like, take us back in the time machine to kind of get beneath the surface. I feel like a lot of time with entrepreneurship, we have this drive that most of the time we don't really know where it stemmed from. We kind of have an idea, but like a lot of people go through tough things, and not everyone, has this burning desire to want more, to give back, to contribute, to take care of other people, right? And so it's like I always love starting a question there because it teaches you a lot about a person. So for me, around I'd say high school is when like I started realizing like, man, like I wanna I don't know what I'm gonna do. I wasn't entrepreneurial yet, but it was like, man, I just don't wanna have to live my whole life and wait till I'm 65 to start it. Right? Like just live my life working and saving away. So like you said you wanted to, be able to repay your mom. Like at what age did you start thinking those thoughts of like, man, I gotta figure out some way that to take care of her? Because for me, the thoughts of like just wanting more in life started to trickle in somewhere along like mid to late high school.
Yep. Yep. So for me, probably around age 16.
Really?
So yeah. So again, we never really had a lot of money, but my mom was very resourceful. So when I was very good in music in sixth grade, they introduced a band to my school. We had never had a band before then. So in sixth grade, I remember they had like the table of instruments out, and they're like, pick the one that you want, to play or whatever. So I was like super nerdy, and I was like, I want to play the flute, right? And so I went home that day, and I was like, Mom, we're gonna start a band, and I want to play the flute. And she was like, well, get out of here. I don't have money for no instrument. She was like, I think your uncle played the trombone. She's like, go talk to him and see if he has one or whatever. So I was like, all right. So I like ran over to his house, and I was like, hey, Mom said you have a trombone. Do you have one? And he was like, oh yeah, I used to play back in high school. So he had it. It was literally called Olds, Olds, Olds. It was an Olds trombone. This thing was super old. He probably hadn't played it since high school. Rusted up and everything, but I love that thing. And I remember as soon as I got it, I never stopped playing it.
Really?
And where I'm from, it's Louisiana, so I'll have to. I wish I had the graphic. It's from a small town called Boothville, Louisiana. So it's all the way at the beginning of Louisiana. And I say that because it's the Gulf of Mexico and then like a couple of miles of road and then my house, right? So uh, I would go over the levee because it's a loud instrument, right? It's a brass instrument. So I would go over the levee and I would practice just for hours and hours and hours a day, right? So I practiced so much that I made all the honor bands. So I made the all parish, I made the all the well, all parish, the all local all parish, all district, and then all state. When I made all state, it opened up an opportunity for international travel. And so I went to my mom and I was like, hey, I have a chance to go to Europe, for, I don't know, 20 some odd days. And it's $4,000.
Damn.
And she goes, okay, yeah, we don't have $4,000, bro. Go sit down somewhere. So didn't worry about it. And then they sent another letter, and they're like, hey, last chance. If you want to go, we need your application. So I went back and I was like, hey, Mom, look, I really want to go. It's in 4 months. I really want to go. And she was like, all right, fine. So like I said, she was resourceful. So we took out an article in a newspaper. She created this letter for me. I went to every business in the town, and I was like, make a donation so I can go. And we did like a sock hop. We did a food drive. We shook the cans on the road, right? We did anything that we could to raise this $4,000, and we made it, right? Like,
Wow.
shout out to my small town of Boothville because everybody donated, right? Everybody donated to make sure that I went. And it was probably at that time where I was kind of like, yeah, my mom's pretty dope. And I'm gonna have to do something to make sure that I like get her at some point in this life, right? So I think that was about the time where I realized like I had to. I told her like I want to buy her house. That's the one thing I want to do. So I haven't done that yet, but I was like, don't go anywhere until I get you that house. So
No,
we always
man,
joke about it, But.
yeah, it's crazy. So I actually around that time, so that was like what, your middle school years? You said
No, 16.
16. Oh,
high
when you
school.
started playing trombone.
Yeah, played trombone in middle school. Yeah.
In middle school, yeah. So I started playing trombone around middle school time.
Oh,
I had a
nice.
very late growth spurt, so I dropped it pretty quickly. But there was a good point in time. I was playing for my church. I never got good at it again. I said hitting that like that seventh, that seventh position, whatever. Like
Yep.
yeah, I had to like overextend just to play it. So I never got too good at it. But I did
Yep.
play trombone for a little while for my church. We had a little band going, and then I actually
Nice.
ended up letting it go. But that's crazy, like how we both played trombone when we were younger, and that's also
Yeah,
super
man.
dope too. How resourceful you guys were. A lot of times, like you hear, like, "Oh, we don't got it," and that's the end of it. It's just like that was very, whether she realized it or not, extremely entrepreneurial. Like being able
Yeah.
to get the most of it, and like
Yeah.
being an entrepreneur now, like man, being resourceful is like a prerequisite to becoming an entrepreneur when you're starting off with like from ground zero. Because if you don't have any assets or anything, you have to like duct tape different softwares and stuff like that together. You got to figure stuff out. You got to
Yeah.
make the best of what you got. And a lot of times you don't have much. So that's crazy. So that was around 16. You started playing trombone. You started taking that seriously. So after high school, where does the journey go? Did you just keep going and playing music into your, after high school? Like, where did the journey go from there?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had this guy, Michael Subrook, who was a friend of mine. He had joined the Marine Corps. The one place I said I would never go, by the way. It was the only. It was the only branch where I was like, I would never in a million years join the Marines. I was like, dude, like if war breaks out, they are the first ones to go. I'm never doing that. So lo and behold, he joins the Marine Corps, and I guess he told them about me. I had done well on the ASVAB, which was pretty funny. I took it seriously just in case, right? I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna go into the military. I was like, but just in case, I'll take it seriously. So I scored well, and the recruiter showed up on my doorstep. Now these guys drove, you know, from a town called Belle Chase. So from Belle Chase to my town is about 56 miles, right?
Yeah.
So they drove a long way to say hi. So I'm not just going to turn them around and be like, nah, I'm not talking to the Marines. So we invited them in. They sat me down with the book, and they're like, all right, you can have any one of these jobs. If you see something you like, pick one. And I was like, guys, as I'm turning the book, I'm like, you guys realize, like, I appreciate you coming out here, but I'm never going to join the Marine Corps. I was like, it's not going to happen. And as I'm turning the page, there's a drum and bugle corps, right, which is like a all brass musical group, which I love. I did march drum corps as well. And so as I'm turning the page and saying I'll never do it, the picture turns, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, what's that? And their eyes kind of perked up a little bit, because if someone joins that group, you count as a double recruit, right? So I was like, yeah, I'm interested in that one. I was like, what is this? And they're like, oh, that's the drum corps. Yeah, we're the only ones who have one. So if you want to do it, you have to go to ours, because there's no other drum corps. And I was like, all right, sign me up. That's how fast it took, right? I was like, I'm never gonna do this, bro. Which, by the way, in sales, right? Never say never.
Yeah.
Make your pitch and then see what happens. So, sure enough, I signed up right there on the spot. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. They're like, well, you got to audition first. I was like, bro, I'm gonna get in. I was like, I'm going.
Yeah.
And they were like, all right, cool. So, sure enough, they signed me up. I did the audition, of course, made it, and that's what actually brought me to Washington D.C. And I stayed there for 4 years, and then got out, and I loved DC so much that I decided to stay.
That's so dope, man. So I ended up being the ticket out, essentially, in a way. I ended up giving you opportunity that you probably wouldn't have otherwise. It's so dope, like being able to take those talents and pursue. That's one of the things I always like wonder. So for me, I played sports, so I got a couple of D2, D3 offers, like like smaller schools, nothing crazy for football though. And like a part of me, like D2, D3 can offer scholarship money, and D2 can barely offer any scholarship money, and a lot of them are private schools. So if I would have had to pay a whole crazy amount of money just to go. And so I was like, I'm gonna stay in school for the year and a half that I did or the year before the pandemic ended up taking over the world. But it's like one of my biggest what ifs is like, what if I pursued some of these talents that I had, and like just seeing where it took me, because I never wanted to play for the league. Like I knew, like, to be league bound, you have to be so good and athletic, like it's insane. So I knew I wasn't league bound, but like the competitor in me wanted to see, like, all right, can I, how far can I take this? Or how high of a level can I play before my time is capped? And so to go back to you, so you're in the Marine Corps now after you just said you're never gonna ever pay anything, and I think it's so crazy how stubborn we can be sometimes, and like just completely like in a flip of a like switch, just like change everything. I try to like pride myself on how stubborn I am, but like, man, sometimes you just see the right thing at the right time, and it's like that just throws everything out the window. And it's like, ah,
Yeah.
man, sign me up. And sometimes like, especially as an entrepreneur, like you can like a course or like a coaching program, and you get excited and you go into, so let's say you go to a conference, and it's like, all right, I'm not buying anything here. I'm just here to take notes, listen to the speakers. And then next, one of the speakers pitched a, couple $1,000 package. And it's all of a sudden, that's like, man, I got to figure out which credit card I'm going to use and how many different credit ways I'm going to split it up. But I'm going to make it and work out somehow.
Yeah.
And so, all
Yeah.
right. So to bring it back a little bit. So you went to the Marine Corps, you played music, you were there 4 years. Where does kind of like real estate kind of get into the picture there? Like, how did the whole credit and personal finance aspect and real estate aspect, like, how does that all start to form?
Yeah. So when I was in the military, we would party a lot, right? And so ultimately, what happened was I'm at the bar one day with one of my bartender friends, and basically he steps off the bar for a second, goes and has some fun, and then he comes back, and I was like, dude, I was like, you have like the best life in the world, right? I was like, how much money do you make? And he was like, I make like $1,000 a week, but I only work 3 days a week. And I was like, dude, you're making $1,000 a week, and you're working 3 days, so you just have 4 days off? And he's like, yeah. And in the Marine Corps, I was working a lot, right? Like we travel basically 6 months out of the year. It's a lot of travel. It's broken up, but it's just a lot of travel, a lot of work. So I was like, man, that sounds way better. And I had just had my first kid at this time. Well, sorry, I hadn't had him. We found out that we were pregnant, and so I was like, man, I need something that's going to be like a little more free on time. So I was like, all right, well, let me go see if there's something I can do. So I went online, found a bartending school, found out that I loved that, became a bartender, and excelled at that very well. But eventually, they had this guy. I'm sitting at the bar. He comes in by himself. We had just opened, so he's sitting by himself. He orders like a steak, right? And I was like, "Yo, man, celebrating something?" He goes, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I just made $75,000." I was like, "Oh, congratulations, bro." He's like, "Yeah, I made it in 7 days." And I was like, "Hold on." I was like, "You just made $75,000 in a week?" And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, "How'd you do that?" So found out he was a commercial real estate agent. So he had called it for sale by owner, negotiated this contract or whatever, and the commission off it was going to be 75,000. So it took him 70 days, 7 days to do it. And I was like, "Yo, that's crazy, man." And I was like, "My uncle's in real estate." I was like, "Maybe I'll do that one day." So then, fast forward maybe like another week or two, and this other guy comes in, and it's just him and 18 of like the most gorgeous women that you'll ever see. And I was like, "Hey, man, celebrating something?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, it's my birthday." And I was like, "And this is how you celebrate your birthday?" I was like, "Bro, must be nice." And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, "If you don't mind me asking, what do you do?" And he goes, "I'm in commercial real estate." I was like, "Okay, so maybe there's something to this real estate thing," because my uncle, is sitting on millions of dollars, and these two guys are doing really, really well. I was like, "Okay, well, let me look into it and see if it's something I want to do." So same thing, just like bartending, I went and got my license and got into real estate. Now, my journey in real estate is kind of funny because I'm a bartender. I don't know anything about business, right? I grew up poor. I don't know anything about money, right? As a bartender, I made lots of money, but we blew it like all the time, right? We're just having fun. And so all of a sudden, I go into real estate, and now I'm in this new sales world. Even though, funny story, I didn't even know I was in sales or owned my own business for the first 2 years while I was in business. How crazy is that? Right?
Yeah.
Like I thought as a realtor, you work basically for the company. So if I work with Long and Foster, then I'm working for Long and Foster basically. Um, and so that's how I treated it. So long story short, I went on 100 listing appointments because I started off as a listing agent. I had a coach. I paid my coach, I think like 15 grand, something like that, right? I worked with him as a listing agent for the first 2 years. I went on 100 listing appointments. I took one listing. So 15 grand, and I had one deal. Yeah, I was horrible, bro. I was not very good.
Yeah,
I
man,
was not
man,
very good.
you mentioned a couple points I want to talk on because like,
Yeah.
so I got into a restaurant before I got into real estate as well. So I was
Yep.
working. I was a bar back to start off. Then like a couple weeks in, maybe like 2 weeks in or less, the owner's son, they made him a bar back and they made me a busser, even though he wasn't even technically allowed to be dealing with alcohol. And so I'm
Right.
like, bro, and on top of that, he was even better than me, which is the most annoying part. But they made him the bar back instead of the busser, and I'm not gonna get mad because like, I mean, I was super mad at the point in time because like, you feel me? Because like, you guys just violated. Y'all dropped me down like 2 whole levels to, and now I'm
Yeah.
a busser, even though I'm better than the kid, and that always annoys me. Like, all right, I understand connections are important, but like if I'm blatantly better than someone, like yeah, at the end of the day, but it's like you can't hate the player, hate the game, right? It's connections, man, get you everywhere. But I was working at the restaurant for 3 years, and I always tell people like my age, like if you're trying to get some money, screw finding a job, go work at a restaurant, and
Yeah.
like a good restaurant. Not all restaurants are the same,
Yes.
but go
Right.
work at a good restaurant. It's more flexible, right? It's
Mhm.
usually you're getting tipped out that same night. Sometimes some
Yep.
restaurants are different, but the one I was at, you get tipped out same night, and it's just like you're getting cash. You're getting paid usually per hour, which isn't a lot for depending on like for servers and bartenders and stuff. But
Mhm.
usually people get paid something per hour, and then
Yeah.
on top of that, you can network with so many different kinds of people, and you learn like dining etiquette. Like I didn't know anything about like dining etiquette prior to going to working at a restaurant. Like I would tip like maybe 10%, and like I was a bad tipper. I just didn't know anything about etiquette when it came to going out because we didn't have money either growing up. So and my grandma, we're Dominican, so like my grandma, she cooked. So I just stayed in the house. Like why go out to a restaurant when you got food in the house?
Yeah.
Like rice, beans, chicken, like
Yeah.
every day. Right, I'm good. I'm fed, and I never went out. And like you don't know what you don't know type of thing until you do go out and you start to realize, oh hey, like maybe I shouldn't, not leave a tip, right? Because like
Yep.
they're getting paid per hour. That's what I used to think. They're getting paid per hour already. Like they're already working. I'll leave them like almost nothing, maybe a couple of singles or something like that. But I
Yeah.
learned so much working at the restaurant, and then when I got into real estate, so I remember, so I originally tried to get into wholesaling, and I took a $500 course. I got my LLC filed, my logo, my domain name. I was ready to get it going, and I ended up talking to a couple of attorneys because Connecticut is an attorney closing state. And one of the guys was like, "Oh, you can't do that, yada yada yada." Dream was canceled. I was like, "All right, now this is in the winter break between my sophomore, winter, and spring semester." Then spring semester starts up. I remember going out to eat with one of my guys that I knew from high school, and we were at the restaurant that I actually worked at, and he ended up coming into contact with one of our old counselors from the Boys and Girls Club that we used to go to when we were younger and still in high school. And he was talking to him. They were talking for like maybe 20 minutes. I'm like, yo, where does this guy go? I was sitting there by myself. I go in and get into the conversation, and the guy was trying to tell my boy, like, yo, I want to connect you with someone. He's in commercial real estate. And then I hopped into the conversation late. He's like, hey, John, I was connecting Zai. Like, we want to hop on a Zoom call as well. And I'm like, cool. And so the guy's name is Adam. Shout out to Adam. But he was also a commercial real estate broker. He was telling us about, I don't honestly remember what he told us or I just remember at the very end of the conversation, he said, find yourself a mentor. And so immediately after the call, I emailed him and said, do you want to be my mentor? Like, what better place to start? You told me it was your
Yeah.
idea. And so I'm asking you straight up. And so I ended up asking him to be my mentor. And so he re-sparked that fire in me. I ended up actually going the residential route. I didn't go, I was in commercial. I got licensed with KW. And then I ended up my first full 12 months before I stopped focusing on real estate entirely. I did 3 rentals, and that was it. No, didn't close any buyer deals, no seller deals. So I didn't even have a listing, bro. I did 3 little rentals, and 2 of those were for my best friend. So I had a virtually non-existent real estate career, and I thought I was gonna be
Yeah.
like rookie of the year. Like I'm thinking I might have so. So I want to ask you a little bit to bring it back. You said you've spent 15,000 for your real estate
Yeah,
coach. Let me ask you, what was your thought process like investing one at all in a coach, but then
yeah,
two investing that much money in a coach, right? Because investing in someone is right. You can invest a couple hundred, maybe $1,000, but you invested 15,000, which is a huge
yeah.
investment. So, kind of two questions, kind of asking kind of the same thing, but like, what made you invest one, and then what made you invest so much? Because a lot of times people like the cheap, take the cheap route when it comes to investing in themselves.
Yeah, no. So my coach was amazing, right? His name was Andrew Lacey, and he like this dude is very old school, right? I think he's from like South Carolina, super country, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But he is great at what he does, and so he gives like this free class first. And so I went to the free class, and he's got his other students that are there, and they're all like standing up, going, I have 100 listings, I got 20 listings, I got it right. And so I'm like, okay, so this dude is like clearly somebody,
yeah.
like because his people are winning up in here, so I want to win, right? Um, there's only one downfall to Andrew, and because I'm someone like I'm very trusting, and so I'm going to listen to what you say. If you're my coach, if you're my mentor, I'm going to do what you tell me to do because that's what I need. And the one mistake that he made with me was he said, "This is the only course you're going to need." Right? This is the only course you're going to need. Uh, no one should ever follow that advice, right? Because no one person is the answer. I don't care how good you are. The one thing that I learned from that experience was that we're all unique, right? We all have our own slate. I was raised in a household with us, ultimately a single mom. She eventually did marry later, but I had a single mom for most of my life, and we didn't know or talk about money or none of that stuff. So I didn't have a foundation for business. I didn't understand sales. I didn't understand communication. I didn't understand anything, right? But at the same time, I'm super patient. I have like the craziest like uh, um, emotional control, right, and emotional intelligence. So those things are super strong suits for me. You might be completely different, right?
Mm.
They got some people who are hotheads. So we're all different, and so we have to find our own path to success. People will guide us through our little hiccups. He taught me how to do listings. Okay, cool. So to get into a home and book the appointment, I just said it. I went on 100 listing appointments. I tell that to most agents, and they're like, "Dude, you went on 100? Like that's insane,
Yeah.
right?" They're trying to get on three, right? So again, what he teaches works. The guy's a master, right? Unfortunately, all the other stuff that I needed to get me where I am today, he wasn't able to provide. I had to go and find that stuff on my own. So that was the reason why I invested, because he was that dude, and he still is that dude. Um, and he even said this. He said this many times. A lot of people, they'll leave my program, and then, you know, years later they'll come back and say everything that I was teaching them was exactly right, and he's true. Everything he teaches was 100% correct. But imagine trying to teach a child how to write a book when they don't even know their alphabet,
Yeah. No, I
right?
agree with you 100%. I think it's a very, very fine line you have to walk, because if you listen to one person, you're focused. You know the exact step by steps and playbooks to follow. You know exactly what you got to do, and then the more voices you start to get in your head, if you're someone like myself who has a shiny object syndrome, it could get very distracting, right? Because business is something I already find interesting. So I watch all the business videos, and then I want to test out all of it. I want to do the webinar. I want to do the virtual summit. I want to write the book. I want to get the TED Talk. I want to do all the things. And it could very easily, steer you in the opposite direction. So I agree with you 100%. That's why I stopped reading, like, as much as I used to, right? I started understanding that I have to, the more voices and the more information I have, the harder it is to like contextualize based on the current season I'm in. So like right now, I know a thing or two about hiring a VA and scaling. Should I know that? One could argue yes, one could argue no, right? If you're arguing no, you're right, because right now I'm not in a stage of my business where I have the funds to scale, nor I'm not busy enough to really scale yet, right?
Yeah,
But two, someone can also answer yes because eventually I will be there, and so better to be enter into something prepared than not. And so as I said, it's very tricky because you need to learn more to prepare yourself for what comes ahead, but then the more you learn about what comes ahead, it's like it can distract you for what the current season that you're currently in, especially as I said, if you're someone that has shiny object syndrome, it could be super distracting. I've been trying to I mean, this was one thing I've been talking. I'm in a mastermind, and so I've been talking to my mentor a lot recently about like, all right, what do I got to do like right now versus all these different things. And so like to flip it back to you a little bit. So how do you navigate that? Because it could be very, as I said, like you listen to one person, it's gonna leave out a lot of the stuff you need to know. But if you listen to too many people, well, now you don't know what to do at all because everyone's has a different method. Everyone has a different strategy, a different system to follow to succeed or make money or whatever.
yeah. So that actually, I'll bring up a concept that I created for myself a while ago. I call it living a life inside the Vesica Pisces.
Inside the what?
Right? Vesica
Vesica?
Pisces.
Pisces.
Vesica, Vesica,
Pisces.
and
I
then
think you showed
Pisces.
me. Did you draw a photo of it?
I think so. Yeah, with the two
Yeah. Okay.
circles,
Yeah.
right? So you take the two
Yeah. Yeah.
circles, you overlap them, right?
Yeah.
So life is all about being dualistic, right? In every single thing that you do, if you want to genuinely be successful, you have to have a dualistic expectation behind it. So, for example, you can't always be a hothead, but you also can't always be cool, right? Because people walk all over you. So you have to kind of tote the line in the middle, and for the most part, be a chill person, right? Be nice to people, be kind to people. But if someone oversteps, you need to be able to stand up for yourself, right? So that's kind of how I treat entrepreneurship. To me, I got into entrepreneurship for real in 2018
That
with
was
the
2 years
introduction.
after since you started
Yep,
real estate, right? 2 years. Okay.
yep, exactly. So with a guy named Ty Lopez, right? So Ty Lopez has a program called the 67 Steps. And talking about being stubborn, I stumbled upon his video shortly after I had realized that I failed as a listing agent. So I remember I'm not a crier, I don't cry. However, I was in training with Andrew Lacey, and he is going through and talking about the training or whatever. And, I remember I started to tear up a little bit because I realized, dude, I'm not going to do this, right? Like I was running out of money. I didn't have any closing schedule. And I was like, I got to do something different. I was like, this ain't going to be it. So that's the day that I told Andrew, I was like, hey, man, I got to bow out, right? So I was feeling pretty low at the time. And Ty Lopez comes across the thing and he's like, watch this training on something about entrepreneurship. And I was like, well, I want to be successful, right? So I just became open to the information, and that's what I'll tell everyone: stay open to information because God's always talking to you. So I was like, all right, man, whatever. So I watched this 45-minute free training, and at the end, of course, he's gonna make a pitch. So I'm like, dude, I was like, I know he's gonna try to sell me something. I was like, I'm not spending more than $20. I was like, if this thing is more than $20, I'm out, right? And so he gets in and he starts saying, okay, well, you're going to get this, you're going to get this. And I'm like, all right, $40, man. $40. Anything more than $40, I'm out of this. I'm not doing it. So finally he's like, or $67. I'm like, 67. All right, 27 more bucks, whatever. All right, I'll buy, So I bought the program for $67. And so inside of it, right, first video, he says, listen, he said, if you take this serious, he said, you're only going to do one video a day. That's all you can do. One video a day. So the next video won't unlock until tomorrow. So you have
Yeah.
to do a video a day. He said, if you do one video a day for the next 10 days, you'll never see the world the same way. And I was like, that's a bold claim, bro. It's a bold claim. All right, I'll see your 10 days. So I did. And I remember basically he just says, look, there's a lot of things you need to learn, right? Discipline, confidence, courage, communication, um, uh, uh, you name it, right? So there's
Yeah.
like 100 and some odd things that you got to learn. And I was like, okay, that's a lot, but okay, I'll bite. And so he says, well, you need to read and you need to take these messages seriously. So I said, okay, cool. So I was reading 3 books a day, 3 minutes, first book, 3 minutes afternoon, second book, 3 minutes right before bed. So 3 books a day, right? So getting 3 different concepts every single day for 10 days straight, plus his videos. And I was taking crazy notes. 10 days later, I'm having a conversation with my mother-in-law. And I remember I specifically used one of the techniques that I just learned, right, in this little training. And I got a favorable result. And I was like, yo, that's crazy. So then I had just read a book called Triggers. And my wife and I were getting into this argument, right? And so one of the little tricks was to stop right at the moment that someone gets angry and ask, what made you angry? Like just then, what made you mad? And I was like, I did that with my wife. And I was like, so what made you mad right there? I was like, hold on. I was like, I don't want to argue. What just made you mad right there? And she's like, well, I'm tired. I'll just use something. I'm tired of you putting your clothes on the floor, in the room or whatever. It's like, it's annoying. I got to be the one to pick it up. Like, I'm tired of this. And I was like, okay, so if I put a laundry basket in the room and I put my clothes in the laundry basket, would that make you feel better? And she goes, yes. And I was like, anything else? And she goes, no. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And she goes, okay. Argument over. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what?
I need to start writing some notes.
What? Right? So here's what it taught me. And this is, I hope whoever's watching this, I hope you catch this because this changed my whole life. What I learned was life was nothing more than just a process. Everything about life is a process. If you understand how to handle that specific situation to get a favorable result, then you can have a pretty smooth life. Right? So it's you that's the problem. It's not the world. The world is doing the worldly things. But if you don't know how to interact in the correct way with the world, then you're not going to get favorable results. So me getting into all those 100 listing appointments, those homes listed, every single one of them went with someone. It was my inability to communicate with that agent or that seller,
Yeah,
to show them, right, that I'm the one to do it for them. And at that moment, when I had that experience with my wife, it changed my whole perspective on everything. And I started to realize that I need to get better at understanding the world. So when you say, how do I navigate? That's exactly how I navigate. What am I trying to do right now? Right? So for example, I want to do my own podcast as well, right? So what do I want to do? So at that moment, I find the best person to do that. So there's a gentleman, his name's Junaid. I went to Junaid and I said, hey, bro, I want to do a podcast. And he said, okay. So he came in and we're going through the process right now of setting everything up. If you saw my podcast studio, dude, it's sick, right? I would have never done this on my own. But so that's one step. So pick the right person to put the path in front of you, right? You need the right process. Now, on top of that, from Ty Lopez's training, I now need to not follow everything this guy says. I need to pay attention to my problems and say, okay, if I want to have a podcast, what do I need? I need to be able to communicate. I need to be able to tell stories. Right? So do I know how to tell stories? No, I need to get better. Okay, so I find every book available, right, on telling stories, and I just start investing and learning on how to tell stories. What else do I need? Well, you need to know how to, run the technology that you're going to have. Okay, cool. I go and I invest into that, right? And so how do I use the technology that's needed to do this stuff? How do I work the lighting? So I take one person to guide me and tell me everything that I need to know. And we're doing his plan. And then I take everything else if I run into any problems and I just immediately go and I try to find that information. So how do I make what this guy's telling me? How do I make that better? So I take the one and the many and I combine them.
Yeah, that's so dope. You mentioned a lot of nuggets in there. One with the Pisces, right? Thing. Was it? Well, how do you pronounce it? The something
Yeah.
Pisces.
Life inside the Vesica Pisces.
Vesica Pisces. There we go. It
Yeah,
reminded me of a quote, right? It's better to be a warrior in a garden than it is to be a gardener at war, right? Because you was mentioning,
absolutely.
about being cool and level-headed, and but also being able to stand your ground. And so I
Yeah.
thought of that when as soon as you thought of that's the quote that instantly came to mind. And then everyone talks about too, but like how there's no shortcut to success, and I could not disagree more. Like that is the biggest BS ever because I always say like pay for speed and pay for access. Like there's no
Yes.
shortcut to success when you're trying to do everything but you're on your own. But like
Yes.
as you mentioned and you've shown multiple times, just in this podcast alone, we only even talking for 40 minutes, right? You said you wanted to start and get into real estate. Boom, you got a coach. You spend money into invest in a coach. You said you wanted to go into something else. Boom, Ty
Yeah.
Lopez had a
Bartending.
thing. You invested in that. You
Yeah.
said you couldn't, but you ended up investing. Boom. Then you got into all right, wanted to start a podcast. You found someone who's an expert in that area. Boom, reach out to him directly and then help them get that process going. And that's kind of what I've
Yep.
been doing as well. It's like, how can I pay for masterminds? How can I pay to get myself in front of more people? How can I pay myself to get in opportunities? And for anyone who doesn't know, the show that me and Jonas both met on, right? That was a big investment, well, big relatively speaking, depending on who you're asking. But it was 4,000
Same for
just to be
me.
on that show, on top of like meeting all the casting requirements because over 10,000 applicants apply per season. Then you had the financial investment acquired. So it's not just anyone and everyone just hopping on that show, right? To be
Yeah.
one to get it through all that, and then also to be the type of person that wants to invest in that type of opportunity. I think it was such a dope crowd, like and such a dope opportunity. Like they did a great job of like casting and putting that group of people together. And I'm glad we were able to connect. And so for everyone that wants to connect with you and learn more about like home ownership, because we talked about like the journey, how you got to where you're at today, how what led up to everything that you got going on. But for everyone that wants now to take that next step with you, right? That
Yeah.
wants to get their credit right, that wants to get prepared for home ownership. Where do we go? Where can we find you at? Where can we get more of Jonas so that we can make an educated, decision when it comes to the home ownership journey?
Yeah. So you can find me. Well, my website is www.thisisscribble.com. So ThisIssScribble. So this is scribble.com. And I go by at Original Jonas Brother on Instagram because everyone goes, "Oh, Jonas, like the Jonas Brothers." So I was here first. I'm older than all of them, and I am an original brother, right? So I go by Original Jonas Brother on Instagram, and of course you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, just Jonas Mitchell. Um, but just a quick thing, if we're talking about the home ownership for a quick second, I can assure anyone that no one's going to find a better person to talk to. My company's been around for 4 years and we still have an all 5-star rating. So um, it'd be good to have a conversation if home ownership is what you're looking for.
Amazing. And now it's time for our lightning round, right? The famous
Yeah.
5 questions, same 5 questions we ask every single guest that hops on the show. Question number one is, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Maybe. No, probably the not. Most impactful lesson that I have learned in life? Ooh, that's a good one. What is the most impactful lesson that I've learned in life? Honestly, here's what I believe, truthfully. It is there is a genuine karma bank, right? Whether you like it or not, when they say do unto others as you would like others to do unto you, I firmly believe that in every fiber of my being. So my greatest lesson that I have is just to be good to people, right? Like if you genuinely want people to be kind and nice to you, just always be good. I don't care if you think that someone's doing something wrong or bad to you, they're probably having a bad day, give them a pass. Be good to people and God will be good to you.
Amen. What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Kindness.
If you had to change someone's life but only had one book to recommend, which book would you recommend?
Oh man. You would think the Bible, right? But that's not going to be my answer for this one. Um, one book that would literally change someone's life is a phenomenal question. I'm going to go with, and this is going to be weird, even if you're not in sales, I'm going to say spin selling, right? Spin
By who?
selling is by Neil Rackham.
Okay.
Spin selling by Neil Rackham. It basically walks you through the four levels of questions. So understanding situation questions, problem questions. I always forget the I. I always say incentive. It's not that. But basically, like, what are you getting out of this process? And then the end is the need payoff. Um, it's a book about communication, and we are always selling in life. Uh, Whether it's you and your spouse or you and your kids, right? You're always selling something. So spin selling, if you can understand how to communicate, you can pretty much get anything in life that you
And what is the legacy that you're working on leaving behind?
want. So, oh, this is thank you for this question. This is a good question, man. And this may sound funny to some, but when we go back and watch this podcast many, many years from now, so one day I want to run for president, and that's a true statement. And in order to do that, the message that I was given was that I need to learn how to earn $5 million, right? Through business specifically. And the reason why that is because in order to run a country, especially one like America, you need to be someone who has a lot of leadership qualities, and you have to have some proof behind you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the legacy that I want to live behind is that uh, we put way too much emphasis on money. Money is definitely necessary to separate, right, the hierarchy of who you want to be in life. You don't need money to have a good life, but you do need to have a lot of money if you want to be a leader and make real affecting change uh, on the world, right? Like Elon Musk wouldn't be making electric cars homeless, right?
100%.
You have to be able to pay top-notch talent in order to have the people to help you create electric cars. So being a leader is more than just your ability to speak and your ability to move people. If you want to genuinely uh, change the world and get people off the streets and those types of things, you need to be someone that knows how to earn a large sum of money. Not about the money, has nothing to do with the money, but you need to be able to know how to do that. So my goal in life is to one day, hopefully, educate America enough to where we can start relying more like we used to on each other and working more together, not from a socialism standpoint, but a lot of those characteristics where you and I partner together and like you're going to use a VA, right? A lot of America, we got to start understanding that we run corporations. We run the corporation. Elon Musk is not Tesla. He's one person who owns Tesla, but the billions of dollars that he has is not serving America. It's just not. So once any corporation gets to a certain level, I would hope to see that they would start to feed back into Americans. And to curb our hyperinflation that everyone is so afraid of, we have to teach Americans how to become more entrepreneurial. We need to start hiring from other countries. We don't need to pay another American $15 an hour if someone in the Philippines will take four, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how about we just teach America how to be entrepreneurial? Even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, you just have to understand the concept so that we can work together, build our corporations so that we can not work as hard and start educating the rest of the world. That's how entrepreneurship, that's how capitalism works. Like, we are America because of the money that America has. But we got to keep investing into ourselves. So to get our people off the streets, we need to educate our people a little better, get people to buy in a little bit more to how entrepreneurship works, and then start working with improving the rest of the world. And by investing around the world, that can help us make more money because we're doing it already, man. We're just letting the money stack up on the top, right? Like we got to stop doing that. So that's the legacy that I'm really striving for, is to be able to make enough money to get into the right rooms and impact enough change to where we can start doing things a little bit different.
And final question for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
Sorry, repeat the question.
I said, and for anyone that wants to embark on their Walk 12 today, what is the
Yeah.
first step you recommend they take?
Ooh, man, this one's hard because everyone's in a different place, right? Everyone's in a different place. So here's what I'm going to do, because for the person who they might be on the cusp, like I was in 2018, the thing that literally changed my life. So I'm going to give you the same thing that I got for me. Okay, go and find out, find Google whatever Tai Lopez, Tai Lopez. I genuinely believe that that man has put together the most transformational program, and it's only $67. That's it. He's not trying to get rich off of you. I promise you, this thing is robust. It will teach you, if you're trying to figure out how the whole wealth game works, this will be your initial sort of inauguration. If you can complete that, I promise you, you can pretty much do anything you would ever want to do. That's how transformational I believe that course is. So that would be my one thing. If there's one thing you can do right now after you get done listening to this, Google Tai Lopez, go and find his 67 Steps program and complete it. It'll change your life.
Amazing. So that is all for today, Jonas. Thanks again for hopping on, man. It was a great catching up with you, and we're definitely gonna have to get a part two because this time went by way too fast, man.
Absolutely, brother. I'll be happy to come back.